Welcome to the second presentation in our Parent Education webinar series. Today we're going to discuss writing supports for students with learning disabilities. My name is Therese Gillick, the Director of Technology at Hyde Park Day School. With me are Sarah M. Bowden, Instructional Coach, and Kate Baldwin, Director of Research. Additional information to this presentation has been contributed by Dina Vacha, Occupational Therapist, and Audrey Resnick, Speech and Language Pathologist. During this webinar, you will learn more about writing issues, such as struggles with handwriting, difficulties with spelling and proofreading, and problems with grammar and organization. You'll be introduced to the forms of assistive technology that Hyde Park Day School makes available to address these problems, and you will get to see them in action, being used as your children would use them. During this presentation, we will be answering the question, what happens when a student with a learning disability tries to put pen to paper, or what happens during writing? We've organized our presentation into 3 different writing scenarios that students with learning disabilities may experience. Each scenario provides a general example of a writing struggle and how it might be perceived. We then go into an explanation of what could be causing the struggle, following up with how we uniquely tailor our instruction at Hyde Park Day School to help our students overcome these challenges. This last piece includes a short demonstration of assistive technology tools. Our goal is to help students write at their thinking level, not their spelling level, their fine motor ability, working memory level, or any other learning nuance that is preventing them from writing at their thinking level. The removal of this obstacle might be an instructional strategy, such as a graphic organizer, or an assistive technology tool, or the artful combination of both of these. The 3 scenarios we are presenting today are general examples of how a writing struggle may look. In other words, each student's writing development will look differently. In addition, there are many ways a teacher chooses to design instruction for the students. This will vary depending on what is needed at that time for that writing task for that individual student. Scenario 1 will highlight how keyboarding can help students overcome challenges with handwriting. Scenario 2 will demonstrate how revising and editing tools can help students overcome challenges with not being able to recognize errors. And Scenario 3 will explain how writing production tools can help students complete writing that is more indicative of their ability level. Let's take a look at this piece of writing. What do you see? What grade do you think this student is in? What do you think about the student? You might notice that the handwriting looks sloppy, or that there's a mix of upper and lowercase letters, as well as a mix of print and cursive, irregular letter sizes, and inconsistent spacing. People may have witnessed that it takes the student a long time to write or copy notes, or that the student tires easily. Now, some people might think that the student is lazy or rushed through the work. They might think that the student isn't working hard enough or isn't trying, or that the student just needs more practice. We are going to explain the more likely reason, one that is based on the student's learning disability. Meet Stacy. When Stacy is telling a story out loud, she is animated and creative. However, this is what she looks like when she is trying to get her thoughts onto paper. Stacy struggles with many of the underlying skills needed to write her story. Let's break it down. What does this mean for Stacy when she writes?
Hello, I'm Kate Baldwin, Director of Research. To understand what's happening with Stacy, we need to dive a little deeper into the question of what a student is experiencing when they struggle with handwriting or keyboarding. In what follows, I'm going to share with you some information that comes from our occupational therapists. The first thing to focus on is that handwriting and keyboarding are complex skills, not just simple single actions, although they seem that way to us because we've learned to do them so well. I'm going to outline some of the most important skills that underlie both writing by hand and keyboarding, and for simplicity's sake, I'm going to refer to both of those as writing. First, writing requires a variety of motor skills. You need to have enough strength in your muscles to perform both large and small body movements, as well as enough control over your muscles so that you can perform exactly the movements you intend. This could involve positioning your whole arm in the right way, or moving each finger individually to just the right location. You also need to have coordination between the two sides of your body, so that the left hand can move in concert with the right hand to accomplish a task like pressing Shift with your left hand at the same time your right hand is typing an N. Similarly, you need what's called proprioception, which is the ability to know where the different parts of your body are in space at any given time, so that you can interact appropriately with things in the outside world. Given all the skills a student has to juggle in order to make writing possible, anything we can do to make the writing process more efficient will free up more of the resources that students need to construct and record written language. For example, students who continually need to search for keys or correct keyboarding errors that result from poor technique will have to spend more of their attention on the keyboarding process itself. That means that they will have less ability to focus on the language-specific parts of writing, like constructing sentences, remembering vocabulary and spelling, and getting stylistic things like capitals and punctuation correct. As you might expect, research has found that the written texts of non-proficient typists tend to be of lower quality. This means that kids who can't type without looking at their fingers tend to take the same shortcuts that you see when they struggle with handwriting. They use simpler vocabulary, write shorter sentences and paragraphs, and provide fewer details. It's for these reasons that we are helping our students learn touch typing, so that it becomes automatic for them and they can focus their attention on their ideas and the words that express them. Research also shows that if you begin this kind of instruction in the early grades, when students are still working on basic writing skills, the keyboarding instruction can help reinforce classroom learning and develop fine motor skills more generally. Next, Therese is going to explain how we do keyboarding instruction at Hyde Park Day School.
To address these challenges, all students receive keyboarding instruction. Keyboarding is a learned skill and needs to be explicitly taught. We have two goals for students. The first is to use correct posture, and the second is to learn the correct keys. Our approach at Hyde Park Day School is to help students build muscle memory in their fingers. Let's demonstrate what that means by listening to what a student is thinking when they are using the hunt and peck method to type the sentence, "It is a sunny day." I. Where's the I? Okay, there it is. What's next? T. T. Space. Is. I. Where's the I? Okay. S. Where's the S? Wait, what was I writing? Okay, S. Oh wait, that's a D. Where's the backspace? And so on. We are trying to get students to remember where the keys are so that instead of looking at their fingers, they can spend their mental energy on thinking about their ideas, not where the keys are. If you have played a sport or the piano, you know how important practice is. Practice is what makes the muscles remember what to do. We have students practice for accuracy, not speed. We also practice good posture. Good posture is sitting in a relaxed, upright position, centered with the keyboard, hands and shoulders in a comfortable position, vertically aligned with the computer, and curved fingers on the home row. Correct posture impacts arm muscles and therefore hand placement, so we emphasize it to reinforce that correct hand placement, reduce arm fatigue and pain in the long run. Students practice keyboarding weekly. Next, Sarah will introduce the second scenario, how revising and editing tools can help students overcome challenges with not being able to recognize errors.
Hello, this is Sarah and Bowden, instructional coach. Let's meet Ben. When Ben is writing, he has great ideas, but his sentences are filled with errors. Ben knows there are mistakes. He just doesn't know where they are to be able to revise and edit. Ben struggles with being able to identify grammar and syntax errors when he is writing. Let's break it down. What are the underlying skills Ben needs for editing? First, let's take a look at a paragraph that Ben wrote. T-Rex were the fierce dinosaurs that attacked others for food. They was one of the biggest dinosaurs of all times. The Field Museum has the bones of one. She named Sue. Sue was founded by a lady named Sue. That T-Rex skeleton is the mostest complete skeleton ever founded. They's still trying to figure out what killed Sue. What do you think about it? There are a lot of mistakes. Words are missing. There are grammar mistakes and spelling errors. Capitalization and punctuation are missing. Now, some people might think that Ben just didn't try, or rushed through his work, or that he just didn't care that there were mistakes. But that's not the case. Ben would never say aloud a sentence like, "She named Sue," but he has difficulty translating the sentences in his head into written form. And when he reads over what he has written, he doesn't see the mistakes he has made. Now Kate will explain the kinds of underlying difficulties that Ben may have that could interfere with the writing process.
In addition to the motor skills we discussed earlier, there's also a set of underlying cognitive abilities that students need in order to write and to read over and revise what they've written. The following information comes from our speech-language pathologists and learning specialists. The highest level type of cognitive ability needed is called executive functioning. This is the ability to plan and organize your actions. We'll discuss this ability in more detail later in the presentation. Next is memory, two forms of which are needed in producing language, long-term memory and working memory. Your long-term memory is the storehouse of everything you know about the world and also about your own language. Your working memory is the ability to hold on to whatever you've grabbed from your long-term memory for a short time while that knowledge is actively being used. Your working memory provides a place for gathering your ideas and organizing them prior to writing. Long-term memory and working memory work together to support both the initial writing and also the process of editing what you've written, when you recall the spelling and grammar rules that apply to what you've written. A student with memory issues will have difficulty keeping both what they've written and what they intended to write in mind for long enough to notice whether they're different or not. Next is visual spatial processing, which means being able to absorb information through our eyes and make sense of it. This ability is used when you review what you've already written. When it works well, it means that you can look at writing and understand it. But if it doesn't, well, you can't edit errors that you don't see and recognize as errors. And finally, there are two cognitive abilities related to the sounds of language that also contribute to writing and editing. Auditory processing is the basic ability to process sounds and identify them, to give them meaning. An impairment in this area can make it hard to notice errors when something you've written is read back to you. Phonological awareness is the ability to identify and mentally manipulate the various sound units of language, like individual consonants and vowels, syllables, and parts of words like prefixes and suffixes. Students' composition skills are closely related to their degree of fluency in producing letters and words. A student who has difficulty in this area will find it harder to notice when a word is incorrect or incomplete, and will have to expend more effort and look deeper to locate and make corrections. So anything that helps a student find and correct errors should improve the quality of their writing. And that effect is only intensified when the reading process itself is very demanding, as it is for students with reading-related learning disabilities. They're already trying to juggle the ideas being conveyed, the words they may have difficulty spelling, and the grammatical structures they have to decode. So there may not be enough cognitive resources to spare to let them monitor their own mental processes in order to find errors. Anything that makes that process less demanding is going to make our students more successful at correcting errors. At Hyde Park Day School, we use several techniques and programs to support students in locating and correcting the errors in their writing, which Sarah is going to tell you about now.
In order to edit with accuracy, students must be able to identify spelling and grammar errors. This requires focused instruction on the individual skills of phonetic spelling, words that follow the rules of the English language, and non-phonetic spelling, words that do not follow the rules. It also requires teaching how to use grammar to formulate sentences and knowing grammar rules to locate errors. Hyde Park Day School primarily uses the Wilson Language Program for spelling instruction of phonetic and non-phonetic words. Each step in Wilson focuses on teaching identified phonetic rules for reading and spelling. Non-phonetic words are also taught at this time, using kinetic or hands-on methods and repetition for recall. Grammar instruction often takes place within the context of writing practice. Using the Step Up to Writing program, students learn how to compose grammatically correct sentences and paragraphs using graphic organizers, which use visual frames to provide structure and support. Speech-language pathologists also lead VV, visualizing and verbalizing. The program teaches students to build pictures in their minds in order to create a mini-movie based on what they are reading and/or listening to. Students practice using the structure words to add details to make a better movie. Oral descriptions move to written sentences, and then paragraphs as students progress through the program. Editing checklists are often used to help students focus their search for specific types of errors. The CUPS format is most commonly used. CUPS stands for capitalization, usage, punctuation, and spelling. Teachers can then customize checklists for individual students. The first customized checklist provides a written and visual example. The second customized checklist provides sentence cues.
The first demonstration is for a tool called Read and Write for Google Chrome. This tool has text-to-speech, which allows students to listen to their writing. When students are finished with their first draft, they enter the revising and editing phase of the writing process. Some students read their work aloud to catch their mistakes. Others use a tool called Read and Write for Google Chrome extension. They have a feature where they can listen to their writing.
T-Rex were the fierce dinosaurs that attacked others for food. They was one of the biggest dinosaurs of all times. The Field Museum has the bones of one. She named Sue. Sue was founded by a lady named Sue. That T-Rex skeleton is the most complete skeleton ever founded. They still trying to figure out what killed Sue.
So spell check is a common feature, so students will go ahead and do that first. Now, this method isn't going to find all of the mistakes, but it is going to help them find many. You'll notice bones, they still didn't get that, as well as skeleton. So now they'll go ahead and listen. And as they hear their mistakes, they can go ahead and correct them on the spot.
T-Rex were the fierce dinosaurs that attacked others for food. They was one of the biggest They were one of the biggest dinosaurs of all times. The Field Museum.
So sometimes they'll be able to catch where they have run-on sentences.
They were one of the biggest dinosaurs of all times. The Field Museum has the bones of one. She named Sue.
Or they may even be able to help rewrite their sentences.
Her name was Sue. Sue was founded by a lady named Sue. That T-Rex skeleton is the most complete skeleton ever founded. That T-Rex skeleton is the most complete skeleton ever founded. They still trying to figure out what killed.
And they go back and listen to it to make sure it sounds the way that they think it should
They
sound.
are still trying to figure out what killed Sue.
As we mentioned earlier, students with auditory processing and working memory issues may not be able to use this feature alone to locate all errors. That's when they need a tool like Grammarly. Our students use the premium version of Grammarly because it finds more complex mistakes beyond capitalization and punctuation. Let's see what this writing example looks like when using Grammarly. Students copy and paste their writing into the Grammarly program. For this example, Grammarly found 17 errors. We're going to go over a few of them. So first, Grammarly will find spelling errors, and correcting a mistake is as easy as clicking on a suggestion. It'll also find capitalization and verb agreement errors. However, the student still needs to think critically and make decisions about what to do. So for bonds, Grammarly gave 3 options: bonus, bones, and bounds. A student would need to be able to understand and choose bones. Grammarly may also give suggestions that a student hasn't been exposed to yet, such as passive voice. They can choose to ignore this for the time being until they have a chance to speak with their teacher. So here's another example for all. They may recognize like, oh, that's how you spell that word. It is typical that a student may simply click on a suggestion. That's an indication that to the teacher that student needs further help with that mistake. For other errors, like the word mostus, Grammarly identifies that as an unknown word. That's an indication to the student that they need to make a decision. Do they need to correct that, ignore it, or ask their teacher? So in this case, if a student corrects it, notice that Grammarly will continue to edit and find more mistakes that a student needs to decide what to do. When they're finished, ignore this last one. When they're finished, they can copy their work back into a Google Doc and use text-to-speech to see if there is anything else they can do to revise and edit their writing.
Next is Sophia. Sophia is an 8th grader who struggles with completing written assignments. When writing, she produces the least amount possible to meet requirements, often using repetitive language and simple sentences. However, when Sophia is speaking, she uses more complex sentences, so we know she has the ability to express her thinking more elaborately. Sophia has been learning about immigration to the United States in her social studies class. In class, she is animated and expresses her ideas clearly. When it came time to write about what she learned, it was challenging for her to spell the words she wanted to use. Here is an example of Sophia's writing. It was hard to go to the U.S. People had a hard time. People had to find... Let's break it down. Why is Sophia's writing so different from her verbal ability?
Part of the answer is that although writing and verbal ability are related, they comprise quite different sets of skills. The extra tasks involved in writing include not only motor skills and spelling, but also planning the whole structure of a written text, which is called executive functioning. Problems with executive function can make a student's writing look disjointed or disconnected as students bounce from one idea to another. In their minds, they may see how everything connects, but they've often left out key pieces of information from the written product without noticing that they've done so. Short and long-term memory also affect the final product. Our minds are like a filing cabinet filled with little folders. Those who have strong mental executive functioning and memory skills have neat labels on everything, making it easier to access. Those who have difficulty with language and vocabulary have a file cabinet filled with loose papers and are blindly grabbing in the hopes of finding the words they mean to use in their writing. If you have a language-related specific learning disability, that places even more stress on the filing system, and the higher-level planning of the writing process is likely to suffer. That's where graphic organizers and word prediction software come in. Graphic organizers, voice typing, and word prediction software are techniques that address two different bottlenecks that can hamper a student's writing: planning what you want to write and accessing the right words to express your ideas. Graphic organizers are a kind of visual display that shows the larger scale structure of a text, anything from a sentence to an entire essay. Graphic organizers work as a kind of scaffolding that supports the writing process. Research done with both learning disabled students and grade-level writers shows that students who use graphic organizers spend more time planning what they're going to write, which means they plan to include more events and more details. They actually include more of what they plan in their eventual composition, and as a result, they end up writing compositions that are longer overall and contain a lower proportion of irrelevant information and digressions. And as a result of this support, students experience less fatigue and cognitive load during the writing process. With voice typing, which is also known as speech-to-text, students who have difficulty translating the words that exist in their heads into written form can write by speaking, which means that what they write is a much better reflection of their true level of knowledge. Word prediction software also addresses the problem of not being able to write down the words and sentences you could construct verbally. Word prediction software presents students with options for what word might logically come next in a sentence. The use of voice typing and word prediction software improves the quality of students' writing. They write more, what they write is better spelled, uses more sophisticated vocabulary, and is more grammatically correct. The use of these tools also lessens students' frustration with writing and their level of perceived tiredness around writing, which makes them more willing to try writing again. Now Sarah is going to describe how we at Hyde Park Day School use graphic organizers, word prediction, and voice typing to support our students as they write.
By 8th grade in the general setting, teachers anticipate that students can formulate a variety of sentence types and produce multiple paragraphs on a given topic. This means our students who are still working on sentence formation and spelling are in a frustrating position. They are now expected to increase the length of their writing by including relevant vocabulary and detailed examples. Frustration leads to repetitive sentence structure. Word usage becomes basic as students encounter problems accessing the language and spelling skills necessary. Hyde Park Day School uses Step Up to Writing, a multisensory approach using visual, auditory, and/or tactile parts to instruction. Strategies such as color coding, physical manipulation of sentence strips, and listening to sentences and paragraphs provide multisensory support throughout the writing process. Teachers, occupational therapists, and speech-language pathologists collaborate to work on foundational skills. While learning these skills, students are also introduced to tools and strategies to support their output. Next, we will watch a short video example of a student struggling to write without tools. You may need to turn up the volume to hear the student clearly. Look at the right side of the slide to see what she is writing while watching her talk through the writing process. Now, let's listen.
I have to write a paragraph about immigration. It was hard to go go to the U.S. It was hard to go to the U.S. People had difficulties. No. People had a hard time. Immigrant, no. People had to find employment. No. Okay, that's enough. Wait.
As you can see, our student became increasingly frustrated when she couldn't remember how to spell the words she wanted to use. This led her to use simpler sentences and eventually give up on her writing. Our student decided to make an outline to organize her thoughts before trying to write again. Accordion outlines can help support students with staying focused on the topic and recalling specific details they want to talk about. Now our student has her outline and is going to use voice typing to dictate her writing. Again, you may want to turn up your volume. Let's watch.
I have to write a paragraph about immigration. I'm going to use voice typing. Immigration was very challenging for some people, period. People came to America for many reasons, period. Some came for food and others came for land and housing, period. Some came for religious freedom, period. Oh, that looks really good.
Our student sounds almost surprised at what she wrote when reading it back to herself. By removing the stress of spelling and including the support of an outline, she was able to include more vocabulary and write more sentences. Look at the writing side by side. We can see a difference in how much the student was able to produce without and with tools. The difference is clear. This student benefits from these tools. But sometimes, even when a student has an outline, he or she can't think of the words to use. That is when a program like Co-Writer is introduced. Co-Writer allows for topic-focused dictionaries, which are connected to word prediction suggestions to help with word selection. Here is a video on how Co-Writer and topic dictionaries work.
To access Co-Writer, you need to turn on the extension in the toolbar. Students often comment that it looks like you're turning on a brain. Next, they can turn on what's called a topic dictionary. So right in the toolbar is a little book, and when they click on it, they can go ahead and enter in the topic. So if you remember, Sophia was doing a research paper on immigration. So we're going to type in immigration. And you'll see
immigration to the
United States, which is more specific. We're going to turn that one on. What's great about Co-Writer is it will create a topic dictionary instantly. So you can create an infinite amount of topics. So we're going to wait while it creates it.
Vocabulary, and as you can see, residential Nazi solemn.
This blue tab means that that dictionary is on. We're going to go back to the editing window and we're going to start to type. So the student is thinking immigration. Whoops. And you can see it comes up as the first choice right away. So they can click and they can continue to move on with the rest of their sentence.
United States.
As you can see, the topic dictionary, coupled with the drop-down word prediction, provides specific vocabulary support, helps structure sentences, and decreases spelling concerns.
Let's recap. Keyboarding is a way for students to overcome challenges with handwriting. Text-to-speech and Grammarly help students identify errors that are difficult for them to see. And voice typing and Co-Writer help students overcome the challenges they face when expressing their ideas. All of these tools, in addition to the rich instructional experience your students receive from their teachers, help build the confidence students need to become independent learners. We'd like to wrap up our presentation by clarifying some of the responsibilities that come with choosing assistive technology and emphasize that not all students need all of these tools all of the time. Let's talk about the teachers first. The teacher is responsible for the process of matching the assistive technology to the student. They are also responsible for teaching the student how to use it. Like learning to write, learning to use assistive technology takes time and changes as the student's needs change. Using the assistive technology is the main responsibility of the student at Hyde Park Day School. One of our significant ingredients to a student's learning experience is the success attributes. Knowing how to advocate for oneself is one of the success attributes. The third group is parents. We ask that you know which tools your students use and have a general understanding of what they are, which was one of the hopes we had for this presentation. This information comes to you through the ILP process and your student's teacher. The other thing that parents can do to help is to get a good diagnostic evaluation of your children in order for us to truly determine their deficits and appropriate treatments and tools. One of the suggestions that's most consistently found in the research on assistive tech and writing is that the selection of what technologies a student should use has to be done on a case-by-case basis. It's necessary to consider each student's individual set of strengths and weaknesses when choosing software. This is the teacher's responsibility, but getting a good evaluation of your student can help them make that selection more effectively. Last, it's everyone's responsibility to communicate with each other. When we first introduced these students, we brought up the ways some people might think about the student's work. That the student might not be trying hard enough, or is maybe rushing through their work, or just needs more practice. Our main goal for today's presentation was to show you how these can be misperceptions, that these students can work with their learning disability and be successful. Learning how to touch type helped Stacy complete her work. Grammarly helped Ben see and correct his errors, and voice typing helped Sophia produce more and better writing. One point we'd like to emphasize is that using assistive technology is not cheating. As you saw from the demonstrations, students still need to think critically about their writing. It's still hard work, just different hard work, and the end product is one that better reflects the student's thinking level. Thank you for watching our presentation today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us.